Hello and welcome to the O&M Stockroom. We're your hosts, Brian McGarry.
And Ken O'Malley.
Tonight is episode 24 of Complimentary Cinema. If you are new to the channel, Complimentary Cinema is a program where we review and discuss films that you can watch for free that are available on YouTube. Please be warned, we discuss these films in detail, so consider this a full spoiler alert. So it was your night to pick, and what did we end up with, Ken?
So we watched the 2014 horror movie film Jessabelle.
Jessabelle.
Jessabelle?
A lot like Jessabelle, which we talked about at the end after we just finished watching it, but it is in fact Jessabelle because it takes place in the South.
Yeah, Jessabelle, Jess for short, Jessie.
Yeah. So quick rundown for the new people. How do we pick these films?
So these are free films that are available on YouTube that we have not seen before or has been very, very long time since we have seen. And they are typically great quality movies on this service.
They do have some actually pretty good gems, but a lot of them it's really hit or miss what you're going to end up with because a lot of these we have never even heard of.
Yes,
we pick them like almost out of a hat.
We're rolling the dice every time. And sometimes, you get doubles. Sometimes, you strike out.
And we have three primary criteria that we've kind of conjured up that we like to review these films with. At least have these things in mind. So first one is it well written? Is it well acted? And is it well produced? And I think that pretty much covers the gamut of everything that makes a film. The script, how well the people performed, how well was it all thrown together at the end. So will this 2014 film that we saw for free that we had never heard of, will it meet the challenge of those three criteria? We shall see. So this was directed by Kevin Gruter, written by Robert Ben Garant, and our cast of characters include Sarah Snook as Jessie, Joelle Carter as Kate, Mark Webber as Preston, David Andrews as Leon, Anna de la Reguera as Rosara, Amber Stevens West as the Dead Girl, Chris Ellis as Sheriff Pruitt, and Brian Hallisey as Mark. And that pretty much covers all the people that you actually spend any time with. So Ken, lay the groundwork for the opening scene here.
So we start with Jessie, who is moving out. It appears that she's moving in with her boyfriend, so he's helping her move, and they're loading up a pickup truck, and she leaves with him. They're kind of pulling out of the driveway, and the boyfriend's looking at her and not looking to the left, and a big truck just runs straight into the side of the car.
Just absolutely smashes him.
So then we have kind of a little montage scene of in the hospital. There's some kind of procedure going on. They're trying to save Jessie, and they pick out a chunk of her boyfriend's skull that's like embedded in her, and it's pretty gruesome.
It's a pretty metal scene, really, and it starts off feeling like such a Hallmark movie for just a moment. Like the nice young happy couple that's reveling in the fact that they're going to have a kid and they're starting this new life together. And, the young woman looks absolutely radiant. Her boyfriend looks like a daytime soap opera guy with just the right amount of designer stubble. I mean, everything a girl could want. And then the truck happens.
So in the hospital, while they're doing this procedure, she's like kind of coming in of consciousness, where she's hearing things in the operating room, or she's just kind of getting blurry sensory input from things around her. And you pick up pretty quickly that she does have serious damage to her, and the boyfriend did not make it.
She loses the child that she was pregnant with. She loses her boyfriend. She can't walk. She's crippled. At least at least temporarily.
She's recovering, but
She's recovering, but
yeah, it did some serious damage to her.
so she's a hot mess. And then a nurse asks her, who can pick her up to take her home, but she has nowhere to go really. We find out that her mother's been dead since childbirth. The aunt who raised her has died. And she's completely disconnected from her father, and yet he shows up and picks her up and takes her back to this really beautiful old house in Louisiana.
It's definitely seen some better days. It's kind of run down and just not well cared for. You get the idea that the dad isn't necessarily a attentive kind of person. He just kind of does his own thing. He has a flask that he carries around with him all the time. It seems like he drinks pretty regularly.
He's got the blue collar alcoholic schlub thing down to a T. The unkempt hair, the shaggy, Van Dyke, the open shirt flannel thing. He marks off all of the little check marks on that list.
Yeah. It's also worth mentioning that they do have a good amount of land, and they're on a body of water as well. They have a boat and like a nice little dock. So it is definitely a nice place. It's seen better days as far as just not being well kept right now.
It's definitely run down, but I mean, it is a veritable mansion in the bayou.
So our main character is going to recover at her dad's house, and she does have a wheelchair. That's the main way she gets around. But the dad just kind of, plops her in a room that it used to be her mother's room. And it had been sealed off from the rest of the house. So it's actually in pretty good shape, but just totally not used in a long time. In fact, there was like a dresser that was blocking the door to come in, and all the windows had been shut, so that no light had been coming in. So once all of that is kind of undone, it looks like a pretty decent room. But she's just like left to her own device, and she's going to, quote, recover, but there's nowhere for her to go. She's stuck in this house, and so she just starts kind of poking around and seeing what is in her mother's room. She didn't know her mother because she died in childbirth or around that time. So she just kind of starts going through mother's things to kind of get an idea of connection to her.
She finds a couple of like trashy romance novels, a little ceramic bird
In her clothes.
Some clothes, and she finds a box under the bed containing some video cassettes.
And on the lid of the box, it says Jessabelle. So that's
our main protagonist's name.
Right. So inside the box, there's the tapes, there's some tarot cards, there's what else? I guess that's kind of it.
I really think that was it that was in there. All I remember were just some videotapes.
I guess the tarot cards were in the little, the chest. There was like a little jewelry box or something.
The mother also dabbled in tarot.
Yes.
So she finds this tape that's addressed to her, so she puts it on. And it's a video from her mother before she passed away, recording a message to her on her 18th birthday, which has since come and gone, and she's never seen this. And she wants, she's like, says, hi, I love you, and all this fun stuff. And it's a very touching and emotional period. And she's like, oh, so I'm going to give you a tarot reading. And then she just puts the, first card, is death. And she's like, well, no, death isn't death. It means transition, which is what I've heard in every tarot reading I've ever had. So it must be true, right? And then she's like, oh, wait a minute. There's a presence in the house. It wants you out. And then her dad comes and turns off the television and flips out and smashes the tape and just kind of leaves her to cower in the chair like any good father would.
Yeah. And the mom makes a number of predictions at this time. She starts saying, like how the child's never going to leave this small town and, all this kind of stuff. And the daughter's like, well, none of that came true. So, she doesn't put a whole lot of stock in that. Because all the predictions just are wrong for where she's at her current time in life. And like you said, the dad comes in and just breaks it and has a very strong reaction to it.
A very strong reaction. He, I would even call it a violent reaction. just not physically violent towards her. But it's amazing he didn't smash the TV while he was at it.
That would have been a smart plan.
Yeah, it would have been
With
the
the
smart.
VHS player.
Yes. Yeah, because that. So he ends up. Basically, he destroys stuff and then goes away. She cowers. Next morning, he's like, "Oh, I made breakfast. Sorry, I was drunk. It won't happen again." It's like every alcoholic says that. And then he, goes off and goes to work. And I think after that, she finds more tapes.
Yeah.
More tapes.
Yeah, she's looking through, 'cause she doesn't tell the dad where she found the tapes, so she still has the box. And so she starts with the next tape, which ends up being a more lighthearted, I think, tape, the next one.
It starts off like that. She's like, "Oh, so I talked to Moses, who taught me tarot, and he said that, the presence in the house is actually you. And then I'm going to do another reading." And then she gets even more upset as she does this next reading because things appear to be even worse.
She does also have in between, she has like kind of night terrors. So that it's similar to kind of the scene in the hospital where she's just getting bits and pieces of it.
Mm-hmm.
She's seeing things and it's kind of disconnected from reality. So I think the first night is when there's the sheet and she sees someone sitting in her wheelchair, but then there's no one there when she pulls back the sheet. So there's a number of these kind of scenes where it's bending between, is she asleep? Is this reality? What's going on exactly?
It's really hard for us to gauge what is reality and what are dreams at times, and even more so for our main character.
She always seems, to wake up and then things are fine whenever she does wake up. So it does seem more like these kind of supernatural dreams or unsettling dreams she's having. But the tapes definitely have a big impact on her.
They're definitely not helping her psychological stability at this incredibly precarious time.
Right.
Just after losing her own child and her man, and now being stuck with her alcoholic father.
Yeah.
So that kind of lays the groundwork for that. Soon after, though, her father discovers that, she found more tapes, and
he's just way off. Like, he hasn't been very fatherly or warm or anything throughout this whole process.
Not in the least.
But that really sets him off.
And he decides, I'm going to burn them. Because that's what you do with magnetic tapes is burn them, apparently.
Before he does that, though, even.
Before.
Because he doesn't even want her to go anywhere. So that's the part where he takes the wheelchair and goes down to the end of the dock and throws it off the end.
He did that when he saw the first tape.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he threw her perfectly nice new wheelchair in the lake after she found the first tape and said, "No more snooping."
Yeah, so that she can't get into stuff.
Yeah. Incredibly heartwarming and comforting, especially at such a delicate time. The man shows a lot of sympathy for her situation. But yeah, so he catches her watching more tapes. Or is it? No, he didn't. It doesn't matter. He finds more tapes. He flips out. He decides, "Hey, I'm going to burn him." So he throws him in like one of those rusted out oil barrels and goes to his shed and grabs some gasoline. And this is the second of a couple of things that caught my attention a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the very first one was actually the very beginning of the film when her boyfriend is carrying a CRTV, cathode ray tube television, and he's picking it up like the thing's clearly empty. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't have the weight and substance that it required.
Yeah.
If any of you have ever carried around a large CRTV, those things are incredibly heavy.
Yeah, they took the insides out for the movie.
They absolutely did. The way he just kind of just sets it in the trunk without it going like thud. So that was the first thing that kind of like jolted me out of my suspension of disbelief. The next part is when the father, Leon, grabs a can of gasoline. He goes and he pours it on the barrel, and then he goes looks, for some matches. Finds a Zippo. Boom, his arm catches fire. And then the gas cans start catching fire, and then the whole shed catches fire. And then whatever presence that has been haunting Jesse kind of locks him in this shed.
It's very much a what's it, that movie? The one where the people die and it's like in a certain like Rube Goldberg kind of way.
Yeah.
What were those called? Final Destination.
Yeah.
It was very much like that.
It was. That's a good analogy there. But the thing with the problem with that scene, gasoline is explosive and combustible. It doesn't just catch fire. It was such a bad error.
Yeah.
All they had to do was put lighter fluid. If you wanted just an accelerant, then just make an accelerant. Don't put a combustible, explosive item in there and then just have it catch fire like it's just regular. That was just a rookie mistake, I think, on their part.
Yeah.
But anyway, Leon dies. He cooks to a crisp. There's a funeral. She finds her old boyfriend, Preston. They never say that he's her boyfriend, but they allude to it.
Yeah. They were definitely friends growing up, and then maybe a little more than
maybe
friends in
a little
high school.
more, maybe a little more, maybe. And anyway, she has another one of her, haunting episodes at the place. Sees a half-burnt man who kind of eyeballs her like it's her fault, she says.
And a bunch of strange rituals with like drawings and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of hoodoo kind of stuff. And, she wakes up and Mr. Preston is still there by her bedside, keeping his vigil and, pretty much the only person she has left in the world. God, what the hell happened after that?
They go on a bit of an investigation. So she starts telling him the things she's seen in her dreams, and he's kind of trying to help her interpret them. And so he says, well, what if... I think that's like when he says, I guess they just go outside.
They go out for breakfast. They go out for breakfast and they chat about how nobody's life has really improved in their little tiny town.
Right. And they end up going outside in the backyard and they see something like shining across the lake. I guess it's a lake or a river, whatever it is. The body of water that they're on.
Yeah.
They see some like shining things, and she had seen them earlier, but I guess kind of just thought it was her mind playing tricks on her. But the guy can see them as well. So they go to investigate, and it turns out there's like more of the hoodoo stuff. There's like, pieces of glass and stuff that the light's shining off of, and like broken mirror and stuff, and like masks and like, I just don't know, like designs and stuff.
A lot of Haitian voodoo stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of Creole voodoo.
And they find then a grave site in the woods that has like new flowers and
a freshly sacrificed chicken,
sacrificed animal, and the name on the gravestone is Jessabelle,
with a death date of her birth date.
Right.
So the plot thickens.
So at first she thinks maybe that someone's messing with them, but the number it doesn't really add up. Like who would be doing this, and why is this here? The dad's dead, so they can't ask any questions anymore.
I don't think he would have answered him anyway.
Well, right.
He was never very helpful.
It's very true. He could have got mad about it at least.
That's right. He could have set the boat on fire with gasoline.
Set the forest on fire.
Set the forest on fire. Yeah, so they decide that they're going to come back at night when it's creepier and darker.
Well, they had to get supplies.
And more dangerous.
And they just couldn't wait.
They couldn't, huh?
The plot needed to move on.
The plot needed to move on, and I guess nighttime was creepier.
Yeah, it was creepier for the big reveal that they dig into the ground to see if someone's messing with them or if there's something there.
Yeah,
and there is in fact a casket in the ground that has a baby in it.
So Ken, there are a lot of that Meatloaf song. I'd do anything for love, but I won't do that.
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that I would do for love, Ken. Going out into the bayou in the middle of the night to dig up a grave is not necessarily at the top of that list.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say it's in like the top 50.
Right.
But this guy just does it just as a matter of course of just helping his friend.
Yes.
And this married guy just does it just to quote unquote help his friend.
Well, I think you get the feeling though that really it's more than that, which they keep trying to deny. But the thing is, it's like they would still be together if she hadn't moved away and went to college. they have a strong connection still, even though they don't know each other. They haven't been around each other for a long time. They still do have a strong connection.
Ken, would you go out to the bayou with me and dig up a baby's grave?
I mean, it depends on the circumstances.
Okay, so you're not saying no.
If a bunch of spooky stuff was happening, probably no.
Probably no.
But
yeah, probably no. I'm just saying. I mean, we've been friends a long time.
Anything once.
We're pretty close. Anything once. All right. Okay, so I guess that answers that. So moving on, they find they find the bones of they find the skeletal remains of an infant.
Yeah.
They call the sheriff. The sheriff is very angry and very redneck looking and really wants to know what the relationship is between those two people.
Well, and you got to imagine too, like this is in just a couple of days, like her father died in a terrible accident.
Yes.
A fire. And then now all of a sudden they find a baby's body. Like
they just randomly find a baby's body
on their property.
Yes.
Like, I will say, as far as this movie goes, the reaction of the sheriff seemed very realistic.
It was very realistic, but I would have arrested them.
Yeah.
I would have at least booked them for questioning.
I guess.
I feel like they got off light with just like making a statement.
I feel like that's a country thing too, though. Like everyone knows everyone, and it's like
the whole small town thing.
Not like they're gonna run away. You know?
And I guess in her case, she literally could not run away because she can't walk. Okay, so good point.
But still, they want to.
I feel like the reaction should have been a little stronger there.
They still they want to do an investigation. They took DNA samples from the dad, obviously, who had just died, the autopsy, and then Jessie herself, just to see if they're related to this child. And at this point, it's like, well, Jessie can't stay in this house anymore. Like, too much has happened, and she decides to go stay with Preston. And
great scene. So he takes her to his double wide with his very angry looking wife just hanging out on
double wide. It was a single wide.
Was it a single wide? Okay, so he takes her to his trailer where his very angry wife is like, it's 1 a.m. and I have to work. And my favorite part of that is that she was played by Larissa Olenek. Anyway, Alex Mack from The Secret World of Alex Mack from Nickelodeon, if you remember. Pretty cool actress, done a lot of stuff. She has like this one small scene in this film as just this angry, bitter wife who was actually, all things considered, pretty cool about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was deserved.
I mean, it was totally deserved because, I mean, her husband's been running around with this really hot redhead just for, all day long. He even stayed the night over, and she's just like, I need to go to work. You can sleep on the couch.
I get the feeling that he wouldn't go into the bayou to dig up a corpse for his wife.
Absolutely not.
So that shows you.
Absolutely. It really did, yeah. It was a marriage of convenience.
It's just that, that's a small town. It was the people that were left. They don't seem like they're in love at all. They're just, they live together.
Man. No thanks.
Yeah.
No thanks. And then the very next day, they go off gallivanting around, on more adventures, doing more sleuthing.
They decide to do their own investigation. And they think, well, there was a cook we had growing up. I wonder if she knew anything. So, about who this baby could have been. Obviously, she was there. So they go to the maid, they go to the cook's house, and she is like catatonic.
Mrs. Davis, yeah, she looks like she's 100 years old and just surprisingly well made up for how mentally gone she is. And Preston's able to be like, oh, I used to play with your son, and, yada, and he's able to trigger a reaction from her that's sedate but pleasant. And then the other, Jessabelle comes up. It's like, I'm Jessabelle. And then, old Haitian cook lady starts singing a possession incantation, which is not comforting or settling to anybody.
Yes.
And they leave.
Yeah.
And then they
get spooked off.
And they talk about, they start talking about, and then the old Haitian lady talks about Moses.
Mm-hmm.
She mentions Moses, who was Moses is the person who taught her Jessabelle's mother how to play tarot
Right.
or use tarot, whatever. Operate the tarot card deck.
Correct.
So they want to, go looking for him, and they end up finding a burnt down house with a framed picture of Moses, which is incredibly convenient.
Yes.
And then a bunch of angry locals start beating up the boy, Presto.
And it's worth noting that like the thing with Moses is like another shrine like we've seen earlier. Like there's a freshly sacrificed animal there, a bunch of candles and flowers and whatnot. So it's very similar to the earlier thing. And it also is revealed then that he also died at the same time.
Yeah, he also died on Jessabelle's birthday, which is also the same death day as the unknown, unnamed infant.
So something serious is going on here. And it's connected to more things than just,
Yeah, and I want to point out too, the death date was like in the late 80s, and this is presumably, the film was made in 2014, and it appears to be set around that time.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who would keep a shrine to me and continue to sacrifice animals in my memory 20 plus years after I'm gone, much less 2 weeks after I'm gone. How about you, Ken?
Yeah, that's some dedication.
That seems like a lot of work. It's a lot of animals that you don't get to eat because, they just, they're dead and they rot. It's a lot of visits. It's a lot of time out of your day. Like you've got to go leave your house, drive to this location. You have to procure supplies. So, it's not only a huge investment of capital, but also time and energy. And it just seems like an awful lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
But that's what religious cults kind of do.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of those things where the people, the people that are acting shady, this culty group kind of, like they are, like they know something else is happening, like they're in on it kind of. So you get the feeling that they, I don't know.
They're definitely protecting the site.
Yeah, they're protecting it. They're like dedicated to it.
And then once they realize who Jessabelle is, they leave them alone. But just to revisit my point again, all of the time, I'm going to beat this dead horse. All of the time that they spend at these shrines and sacrificing these animals, like I'm just saying transportation costs, the time for the transportation to get to and fro, the money requirement. This is why I'm not in a cult, Ken.
Yeah.
I don't have enough free time for that. I would rather my disposable income go to other hobbies that don't involve sacrificing animals. I just can't do it.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. It's definitely not worth it.
That's a good thing to agree on. But they have nothing better to do than to sacrifice animals and do these rituals.
I think they do other things. It's just like, it's a very important thing to them. And we find out why later, but...
When we find out why later.
Yes. So at this point, they decide to head back, right?
Do we even know anymore?
Yeah.
There's a lot of driving around.
I think at some point around this time, they decide that they're just going to get her out of there because something else happened. I don't know. There's more haunting kind of things happen.
There's a lot of haunting stuff, and there's a lot of nightmares. And
earlier on, like there's a point in time where we didn't even mention this, but she's like in the tub, and there's like a caretaker that's come and help her with rehab, and the tub turns into like oil, and then there's like this other creepy ghost lady in the tub. The
same creepy ghost lady that we see in pretty much every little haunting spell.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that in a minute.
And it screams at her, and like, but when the nurse lady comes back, everything looks normal again.
Yeah.
So we do have several hauntings kind of like that.
Midday hauntings.
In between.
Yeah. So there's lots of driving, there's lots of talking, there's lots of sleuthing. There's lots of, is this really happening? Is it not happening? In another dream sequence, which apparently did take place because a mirror gets broken that we see is still broken in real life later. She finds another video cassette tape, which she just throws aside but doesn't watch. And you spend the next 20 minutes of the film being like, watch the tape, play the tape, what's on the tape. And, certainly they were well heeled, because to have that many blank video cassettes in the 80s, that was a sign of prosperity there. Those things were not cheap.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them, like the retail value was like $20 per tape. That's not adjusted for inflation. So, you'd be looking at $30, $40 for inflation per tape today. So I'm just saying, to have a lot of blank tapes like that, you can find them at Goodwill for nothing. I'm just saying, back in the day, that was quite an investment. Just another note about the former glory of this home that they live in.
This has been Tape Investment Advice with Brian.
Oh, I'm not even warmed up yet. So
eventually we get to the point where she decides she's going to leave. That's really where we're headed, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to kind of narrow in on that. So, pretty boy decides like, hey, we're not going to come back here. We're just going to get your stuff and get out.
Too many spooky things happened.
Which is fair. I personally would not be, I'd be sleeping with both eyes open, polishing a shotgun by this point. I would not feel safe or comfortable in this house. So, they're rounding up things and everything. And then, pretty boy gets Jessabelle out of the house, gets her in the car. He gets in the car, and it turns out it's spooky dead girl.
Yeah, he didn't have Jessabelle at all.
He didn't have Jessabelle at all. He had spooky dead girl. And she looks like she wants to make love to him, but also kick his ass.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
Like at first, it doesn't seem like threatening at all.
No. But when he is like,
which is noteworthy, it was like that earlier in the tub too.
Yeah.
That she doesn't necessarily start off scary. She looks scary, but
yeah,
she doesn't necessarily start off threatening until she's threatened.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's definitely a reactionary thing. So he freaks out, which pisses her off.
Yeah.
And she's like clawing at him and kind of kicking his ass a little bit. And then meanwhile, we find, our Jessabelle, our human Jessabelle, still putting things away and grabbing stuff to take to wherever they're going to go. And, she goes out and finds Preston, got his ass kicked by a dead girl. How do you live that down? It's like, he never admits to her what happened. Let's just point that out. So anyway, sheriff guy comes up again, and, he's getting increasingly suspicious that something really screwy is going on. Things are not right. Anybody could probably see that a mile away at this point. And she's just like, okay, so she finds out that, so we got, the autopsy back from the dead baby. The baby was murdered. They're still analyzing DNA. Hopefully we'll have a match soon. She wants to know, is Preston okay? Let me know she says, let me know when he comes to and if he's all right. So later she puts on the tape. God, what tape? Which tape was that? The tape from the behind the mirror? Tape. The last tape.
It's the tape with the mom and the baby. And the baby's on the bed, and there's like a pistol on the bed, and the mom is just absolutely losing it and coughing up blood. And
the mom had a brain tumor, apparently.
Yeah. And Jessabelle is not the right Jessabelle.
No.
There's another baby.
There is another baby. So she basically watches her mother commit suicide on that videotape. And then the sheriff calls, and naturally, because it's a horror film, he has really bad cell phone reception, right? Or she does.
Yeah. The first time it's happened.
It's very hard to get through all of a sudden. But basically, she finds out, okay, he's come to, he doesn't want to go to the hospital. He wants to come back and protect her from whatever's in that house. Like any good married man of another woman would do. Putting your old friends first, if you know what I mean. And he says something about the DNA match with the baby. I didn't quite catch what he said.
Yeah, he was saying that it didn't match either.
Didn't match either, yeah. So the baby...
Didn't match the dad or the sister. Or Jessabelle.
Yeah, didn't. Yeah, so the baby was black.
Yep.
African American. Oh, I guess at this point I should just say all the characters have been white folk.
Yes.
And in the case of our Jessabelle, she is a pasty, beautiful ginger.
Yes.
So definitely not African American by any stretch. Or Haitian, as may be the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she suddenly sees her dead mother in the doorway.
Yep. So she has a big old vision, and her mom is there, and her mom is trying to guide her through to understand what happened. Try to put all the pieces together, and on what's going on. And it turns out that the other baby was the actual baby.
The actual Jessabelle.
And that Moses was a bit more than a friend that had been teaching her tarot.
He was more than a church buddy. He was a secret lover.
So when the baby was born and it came out black, the dad knew it was not his baby. And that put him into a drunken rage.
And he killed the baby, and then he went and killed Moses.
Yep. He
And
went and shot Moses and burned his house down. So that was the connection too. This shrine that was supposedly out in the woods was actually Moses' house that he had burned down in, and he was the burned man that Jessie had seen in her dreams, or in her visions.
Pretty tough revelation to have all at once. And then she has a vision of her mother and Moses, who I guess is not her mother after all.
Right.
She was the adopted baby to hide the fact that her mother was cheating on her husband.
We should have picked up too that Jessie didn't look like either of her parents.
Not by a long shot.
So that also would have been a big tip off.
Yeah. So anyway, she has this vision of Moses and her mother, rubbing blood on her forehead and tying her to a wheelchair and telling her that Jessabelle's going to get what's hers. And, they basically just toss her into the lake, and Jessabelle comes swimming and takes this bracelet that she's been wanting. That was her mother's bracelet that's been on our Jessie's arm.
And right when all this is happening too is right when the sheriff shows back up with the boyfriend.
Yeah.
And they see Jessie rolling towards the dock. And it's a great kind of tying in with the rest of the spooky scenes we've had earlier, where things are the spooky vision kind of world, and then all the normal people see what's actually happening, which is Jessie just rolling herself off of the dock.
Yeah.
So it's kind of got that cool dual, like in her mind it's one thing, and then in reality it's another thing.
Well, her reality is just simply different from their reality.
Right.
That's a scary thought, isn't it?
Yes.
Taken to an extreme.
So she rolls off into the water, and dead Jessabelle shows up.
Takes that bracelet.
Yep.
Which, apparently has a lot of sentimental value to the dead girl. And she gives, a very ginger kiss. No pun intended. A very gentle kiss on, Jessie's forehead, and then swims up and boom, it's our Jessie who escaped the water. Or is it?
Nope. No.
And that's basically, the movie.
And she kisses the man that Jessie loved.
Presto.
And basically just says, like,
take me home, lover.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this guy's been wanting to get his dick wet this entire film. So, he's just going to be like, as he's carrying her back to the house, he has an incredibly determined look on his face.
Yeah. His old marriage is over.
His marriage is over. He's got this hot redhead. He knows what he has to do.
Yeah.
He dug up a dead body for her.
Yep.
Little did he know. He's holding the spirit of that dead baby in his arms. Which kind of raises a question. If the dead girl died as an infant, would the soul not be considered a minor?
I guess if it's been around this whole time, is that living?
Yeah, it's not really living, though, when you're just being like, creepy.
The spirit has aged, though.
I guess that's true, which is also kind of weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, so... But that's basically the movie. Our really nice, sweet girl gets replaced by the dead girl's soul.
Yep.
Which is very unfortunate because she really, at the beginning of this film, She was pregnant, and she had a great guy, and she was about to start a new life, and then some semi-truck driver couldn't watch where they were going. So this movie is really about bad driving and why you need to keep both eyes on the road at all times.
You've cracked the code.
I've cracked the code. So let's review a few points here. So best performance in the film.
I would say Jesse.
I would say,
Or
I actually would say the dead mother, Kate,
okay.
played by Joelle Carter. She's the one who actually has the most wide range of emotion for the most part in those little flashback scenes. She does a pretty good job being the hysterical, crazy mother.
I think Preston did a great job too of in that kind of like, the guy that got stuck in the hometown and is kind of pathetic and, just wants to be with this person coming back into his life.
He's not even pathetic. He's just very average. Like he doesn't have anything going for him that like not everybody around him has going for him.
But like he's a likable enough person.
He is, he's very sympathetic. He's a gentle soul. He cares, and you realize quickly like he's genuine.
Yeah.
He doesn't have like an ulterior motive really. Like he's very plain and open about, his failing marriage and the fact that he's just like, I'm just going to do whatever.
So I guess that would be my pick.
Yeah. So, there were, none of them really stood out, but there was a lot of competent acting is what I'll say.
Yeah. For a horror movie, which typically I have kind of a lower bar for individual performance.
Sure.
Not relating to the horror aspects. I think they all did a pretty good job. And I guess it's also worth noting that none of those other characters had anything to do with the horror scenes. It was always just Jesse.
It always was, yeah.
And, the other ones weren't really involved.
Sarah Snook as Jessie definitely did the lion's share of work in this film.
Yeah.
So, she probably deserves just the best performance nod. On the other hand, she had that open-mouthed, vacant look thing going on way too much.
Right.
And that takes a couple of points off.
I think that's exactly right.
So, like, wherever she excelled, that brought it down a little bit. So she's just kind of on par with the rest of them.
Because the parts where she's talking and emoting, like...
those are good.
Pretty good. But then the parts where she's just looking at stuff, like you said, it's a little vacant, you could see wheels spinning.
It's a lot of...
Yeah.
So, you get a lot of that, and it kind of brings things back down.
Yeah.
But overall, though, all the acting is all well evenly matched, I thought.
Yeah, definitely agree.
I really liked just seeing David Andrews again as Leon, her so-called dad. He's in Terminator 3, plays General Brewster. He's in Apollo 13 in a small role. He's just one of those character actors that's been in a lot of stuff. One thing that really cracked me up, though, is just to kind of nitpick some more, because, that's what we're here for. One of the old tapes that she puts on is like from Christmas '86. And they're, you see the house when it was like in its splendor. And, they're all well-dressed and well-heeled, and they have all these friends, and he announces hey, my wife is with child, and it's all a happy moment. David Andrews is wearing exactly the same hair and makeup as he did in his scenes 20 plus years later. He's got the same grayish, shaggyish hair, the same grayish, shaggyish facial hair. They made no effort to make him look younger or more together.
And the sad thing about that too is like it's a low quality video tape that you're just showing on a TV on screen.
Yeah.
They could have totally just combed some black into his hair.
They could have done anything.
And you wouldn't have even noticed.
No. It'd have been great.
That it was a low effect makeup,
Yeah. Or, even just have him shave for that scene. They could have done anything.
Yeah.
And they did nothing. It's like the people who made the film thought we'd be too stupid to figure out who it was if they changed too much. That was probably their decision.
Maybe, yeah. There's only like you said, a couple minor things like that definitely pull you out a little bit. But it's in the end, it's no big deal. It's just it would have been nice if they just went that 1% further.
It would have made a nice those little details like that TV, the gasoline thing. that makeup effect at the end. Overall, I mean, they're pretty minor niggles. They don't really affect the story.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect the story at all if that TV's heavy or not. It doesn't affect the story if the gasoline necessarily exploded or not. The end result was still the same. Things caught fire and the guy died.
I would also complain, because this is more of a personal thing, about the shaky cam during the scenes where Swamp Jessabelle is tussling with people.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the film is very steady, and the shots are very...
Yeah, it really does that, like, that hyper-focused, like, shaky cam thing.
The shots are very well framed the rest of the movie, and I felt like we really didn't need that hand cam shaky look.
We really didn't.
It was already spooky enough. Like, the parts where they were tussling was not spooky. Because of all of that.
I feel like the spirit...
It would have been way more unsettling to have a fixed camera with that going on.
Yeah. I just think we could have done without the tussling altogether.
Yeah.
I mean, having something physically manifest to a point where it can kick your ass can work depending on the film and the overall setup. I don't feel like that was really... It felt out of place.
Mm-hmm.
Like when Dead Jessabelle kicks Preston's ass in front of the house in broad daylight, that felt a bit of a stretch.
I liked it in theory. I liked the fact that he brought the wrong person out to the car.
Yeah, the setup for that was great.
And it was spooky enough on its own.
They showed us too much.
Yeah.
They showed us too much. Like, we could have just seen her lunge at him and then see the aftermath. They showed us too much with that.
Especially the fact that it would have just been quiet inside. Because Jessabelle inside didn't even notice.
Yeah, she didn't hear anything.
Because it was, spooky.
Yeah, they just showed us too much sometimes. And that kind of connects to my biggest complaint about this film is the dead girl herself. Not the actress, not how she played it, just the fact that it's the typical spooky dead girl with the dark stringy hair and the big dark eyes and the sharpened teeth. It's such I haven't been impressed or unnerved by that since The Ring.
Yeah.
In 2002.
Yeah.
That was for me the archetypal original spooky dead girl. And I know there's people that's like, oh, well, it's actually based on Ringu from Japan, and yeah, whatever. The first time I saw it was that film, so that was my bar for that.
Right.
That's at the standard for that. And I feel like it's just been way overdone.
Yeah.
And we didn't need one more.
They could have done something a little more interesting too, for kind of played up the Haitian ritual angle. Because, there's some in the kind of flashback we see the people doing the ritual.
Yeah.
Like, they should have gone more for that kind of thing.
Have you ever seen not in the Mouth of Madness, The Serpent and the Rainbow?
No.
So that is a film starring Bill Pullman from 1987. I want to say Wes Craven directed it. I might be wrong, but I think it was Wes Craven. And that is all about Haitian voodoo, black magic. And a lot of it, takes place in Haiti. And that's a genuinely spooky film that touches on some of these subjects a little more intelligently, I think. At least they approach it from a more scientific perspective at times, and they give a little more actual information as opposed to just being vague about what's going on. And that is definitely a film I would definitely recommend people if you enjoy that type of subject matter. But that would be a good one to do someday if it's ever free on YouTube. I haven't watched it in probably 15 years, maybe longer. But that film did come to mind when I was watching this.
I did appreciate there was a number of times when things paid off. Like, little details paid off later in the film, and not in like a super obvious way. One that came to mind in the very last scene is the dad pushing the wheelchair off the dock.
Oh yeah, that was good foreshadowing.
And earlier in the movie,
Yeah.
Foreshadowed the fact that she would be pushed off the dock in the end of the movie. Also, the thing with the bracelet earlier, where the shadow lady was trying to take it off her while she was sleeping or while she couldn't resist, and that turned out to be the thing she needed to, become real. That's the way I interpret it.
Yeah,
anyway.
that really, it's like once she got that, she could then take over the body.
Because I almost took it as part of maybe that the bracelet was part of the ritual.
Yeah, it might have been.
Because I guess we also should mention that, there was that mention earlier of the spirits, calling spirits to inhabit your body.
Yeah.
And just a very basic understanding of all of that. And then the mom says, what she did, her part of the ritual, killing herself, keeps the door open. So it's like, she prepared Jesse to eventually take actual Jessabelle's spirit.
Man, what does that just say about the fostering system and adoption system in this country? You just can't trust anybody, can you?
I was impressed by the ending to this film because I think I'm assuming this was more of an indie kind of.
It was not a big budget affair, that's for sure.
Production, and I just don't think that most people would have the balls to do that, as an ending, as far as just having your main character
It is not a happy ending.
Completely fail.
It is just not a happy ending,
and it's not happy, but it's to me anyway. It was satisfying.
It was, because it was. It was a pretty good ending, and you do have to admit it does take some balls to have your main character be really likable, very sweet, and just literally from the opening scene to the end of the movie, things just get worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, opening scene. Oh, your baby's dead and your boyfriend's dead. Oh, we find out your mom's dead. Oh, we find out your aunt died. Here's your alcoholic dad. Oh, he's dead too. Oh, here's your former romantic interest. Oh, he's married.
It's like they took everything from her and then killed her.
They really did. She had absolutely nothing left by the end except presto there.
Yeah.
Man, just true for many people in life though.
But anyway, I just appreciate all those little details in this movie. It was thoughtful. Their kind of layout of all of that kind of stuff.
They actually had a plan when they made the film, which is something you don't see very well or very often in some of these free movies. Not that it was free when it was made, but the caliber of film that we tend to review on this channel is not necessarily always as well thought out, but we've been on a really good streak for a while of getting some pretty good films in. Maybe I can just completely screw that up next week with a nice pick.
Just roll those dice.
Just roll those dice. So, in summary, Ken, and in review, have we watched a film that fulfills our 3 primary criteria? Was it well written?
I would say it was definitely thoughtfully written.
I would say it was well written. It was not fantastically written, but it was well written.
I wouldn't praise the dialogue necessarily. It was not memorable, but it was functional. And like I said, the actual parts of it were well planned out and well balanced and well, what's that called? The pace.
Yeah. The pace was good. I would say that, the dialogue wasn't memorable, but I'll say that the script served the story pretty well.
Yes.
You and I were our attention was kept on this film the whole time.
Definitely agreed.
It definitely pulled you in and it kept you there pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm definitely going to say it was well written. Was it well acted? I think overall, yeah, it was very well acted. It is not Shakespeare. It is not Broadway. It is not a Oscar winner, but it was good.
Yeah, and I think it was, by the nature of the story, it was more about the things happening to the people and the mystery they were unraveling, and less really about the individual characters themselves.
Absolutely.
So I think they all played that well.
As a when you look at it more as a mystery more as like a mystery thriller than like a horror film, it definitely works better that way.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, well produced.
Yeah, definitely.
I would say it's. I'd give it 8 out of 10 for production.
Yeah, they had this nice, perfect looking house for this kind of movie with some nice land, and the other places they go in between look like believable rural Louisiana.
Yeah. I mean, it was just well shot, well lit. Scenes
The
were
night
well
scenes were
composed.
pretty well lit.
Night scenes were good.
The,
Yeah.
the dream sequences looked kind of off with the lighting and stuff like that.
You can definitely tell it was a lower budget because of the way that they composed some of the shots. It definitely had a more like stage theatrical kind of vibe to it at times.
Yeah.
But I also really like that.
I appreciate it with this film because they didn't use the CGI. Like that could have ruined this film if they had put in CGI like sometimes they do in these kind of movies.
That's a really good point. I didn't really think. See, here's the thing. I always talk about the CGI when I see it.
Yeah.
Because I hate it. And it just spoils so much. And there was not much.
Yeah. It would have ruined this movie if they had tried to put crappy CGI in this movie.
Yeah, because what you really see for CGI, now that I'm thinking about it, there's a scene where like a mirror bends and breaks. And even then, I would have to look at it again to really see like, is that CGI or not?
Yeah. Everything else seemed practical.
Yeah. Very nice. See, it gets high praise just for that.
Yeah.
Actual practical effects.
And that's the way to do it for a movie like this, because everything else in the film was very grounded in this like town and in this place. And so to keep it in that, because they found a way to make it unsettling in the dreams anyway, where you didn't need a bunch of special effects like that.
I'm just saying, just a dark figure reaching out to you through your bed curtains towards you, that's spooky enough.
Yeah, sitting in your wheelchair.
It doesn't need to be a CGI girl sitting in your wheelchair.
Right.
Reaching towards your CGI curtains, which we see so often.
I'm saying if the creepy girl would have had like the big mouth or like the trope, the trope stuff that was doing these scary movies nowadays.
Just the overall look of her was bad enough. But again, at least it does serve the story.
I'm just saying, if they had made it like a CGI monster, it would have been even way worse.
It would have been terrible. All right, so I guess I guess we'd both recommend this film. So if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out.
Yep, definitely decent horror film and interesting kind of mystery thriller.
I would actually watch it a second time, Ken.
Wow, it is very high praise.
That's high praise. I don't watch films more than once usually, but I'd watch this one again. All right, that's a wrap for tonight's episode here at the O&M Stockroom. We're your hosts, Brian McGarry.
And Ken O'Malley.
If you enjoyed this segment of Complimentary Cinema, more episodes can be found at omstockroom.com, along with links to our Patreon page and various streaming outlets. I think we're probably most popular on Apple.
Yeah.
That's where we get most of our traffic.
Any podcast subscription service is great, though.
Yes. And thank you for listening, and we'll be back next Wednesday with an all-new episode.